Hey folks, I'm the guy with no life who's been running D&D for 39 years, and this is Tales of the 39. And for a couple of those years, like I talked about yesterday, those years happened during the COVID times, and my campaign became my home-based business. And I was running, get up in the morning, eat breakfast, run D&D, eat lunch, run D&D, eat dinner, run D&D, go to bed. I told that story a little bit yesterday. Well, there were a lot of parties that would form with complete and total strangers, as you might imagine. I ran hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of games in just a couple of years. And there's one particular group for today's story, and they had come together. I basically kind of blended a pre-existing group with a couple of extra people. So I was contacted through the platform that I was using to advertise my online D&D DMing business by a pre-existing group of 4 ladies who wanted to play D&D together, just needed a dungeon master. And I had a couple of guys that were looking for a group, and I never saw them on video or anything. See, here's a little bit of an aside, but when I first thought that I was going to do D&D online, I thought that we were going to make it just like being at home as much as possible. And that meant turning on the webcams so that we could see each other's eyes roll, and we could see each other laugh, and we could see each other pour soda and eat chips and roll dice. And I thought it was going to be just like gaming at home or gaming in the game store or whatever, in the attic, in the basement, wherever, that homespun gaming experience. But no. And the reason it was but no was because there's this thing called bandwidth, and video takes up a lot of bandwidth. So yeah, I noted, cameras maybe you out there in the audience world, maybe you have had different experiences than me. Maybe you've got video to work better or something. But no, video rarely worked. Usually didn't even try. We just kind of, it was more important to be able to hear each other. Sometimes when I would try to turn my camera on or something, the bandwidth would slow down or something, and the players would say, "John, you're sounding like a robot. You're sounding all garbled and, and electronic and, like that," and, or whatever. And, yeah, it was time to turn the camera off. So I never saw these folks, but their voices sounded young. They sounded really young, like like they didn't sound like kids, but they sounded like, 20s, maybe early 30s. They all sounded like they were about the same age, and they all seemed to have the same kind of attitude and everything. I thought they might blend well. They did. I was right. Because I was trying to fit people. I was trying to fit people into groups, and, there'll be stories and videos I can tell in the future about, putting together personalities of total strangers trying to make these tables work for my gaming DMing business during the COVID times. But there were these 4 ladies, and they wanted to game together, and I asked if I could add a couple of people to their table, because, it would be rude to do so without asking, and they said yes. So there were these 2 guys. They didn't know each other, just 2 guys who had come to my DMing business individually, and group of 4 ladies that came together. So we got 6 people, and the 4 ladies, they hadn't talked to each other about their characters before they played. Backgrounds. They knew the species in the class. They knew that, one of them was a leonine, one of, from like Magic the Gathering or whatever. One of them was, lion humanoid, and barbarian. Male, even though the player was female, she wanted to play a male lion with the big mane and everything. So there was a leonine barbarian, and there were so they knew that, and one of them was an elf druid and stuff. So they knew the species and the classes they were playing, but they hadn't talked about backgrounds. And so at one point, they're in a dungeon adventure. And there is this is a save the world type scenario, and they have to figure out how to, well, first of all, they have to figure out the villain. And then after they figure out the villain, they have to figure out the MacGuffins in the plot to defeat the villain. And, that kind of stuff's going on. Well, they decided, because different play styles for different people. The particular dungeon wasn't actually literally a dungeon, although it did have one. It was a castle. It was an entire castle. There was a dungeon underneath. But they were basically clearing out this castle that had been taken over by evil. And at one point, they find what was like a pub room for the castle guard when the castle was normal and operating normally before the horrible events that kicked off the adventure started, before the castle had been taken over by evil. They found what had been a pub room for the guard, break room, and it had some casks in it with some pretty good ale and stuff. And so they decided that they needed a break, or their characters did in universe. So they they sat down at the table and all, got ale out of the casks and sat down and decided to role play. And I'm thinking, the world is like threatened here. Like there's a Lovecraftian cosmic evil that is trying to enter the main prime material world here in this castle, and they're going to sit down and take a break. And my DMing instincts, what I wanted to do in my regular DMing style would be to have, this is a good time for a wandering monster encounter. This is a good time for some vile nasty to just come along and remind them that this is not actually a pub in a town at peace with no adventure quest or plotline going on. There's Lovecraftian horror happening here. A being called Auric of the 100 Eyes. The module was called a Palace of the Silver Princess, if you're familiar with classic old modules. And, but yeah, anyway, but I didn't though, because it was a business. It's a business, and so I sat there in my duplex apartment that I was living in at the time, and I had my headset on that I was DMing through, and I just sat there and watched the clock go for 30 minutes that I was being paid. And I shut up, and I just kept thinking, I'm getting paid, I'm getting paid, I'm getting paid, I'm getting paid, I'm getting paid. And I let them just role play. Now, to run a universe with integrity, which to me means like a living, breathing fantasy universe, to try to figure out how it would work if it was real and make things happen realistically within the context of that universe. Because, realistic, John, there's no dragons and there's no people throwing lightning and fire from their fingers and casting magic spells like that and stuff. It's like, what do you mean realistic? There's no undead liches that can exist for thousands of years. It's like, what do you mean realistic? Well, I mean realistic in that universe, So, so even though it wasn't my style of play, but, it was money. It was what I was doing for a living. It was my business. It was my job. It's my income. So I bent my DMing style a little bit, and I just sat there and let them have fun. And I just put as the DM, I just put the universe around them on pause. And turns out that they'd never discussed backstories before, either the four ladies who knew each other previously or the two new guys who'd come along. None of them had discussed backstories. And so when they got to backstories, it turns out that all six of them had the same overused, I'm not going to say lame or tie. I mean, it's a cool backstory. It is. It's a classic trope. It's a very classic backstory. It can be done very well, but it's overused. So all six of them were runaway princes or princesses who were on the down low pretending to be of common blood. All six of them. And so they had a big laugh about that, both as players and as characters in universe. And they're like, oh, what are the odds that all six of us in this party are runaway princes or princesses on the down low pretending to be of common blood? And I didn't say anything. Once they kind of wound up, I just kind of continued, they left the room on the map in universe, and I just kept DMing the rest of the adventure. But it might be uh, it might be a little bit overused. The trope. I mean, one of my daughters, that's her main character, uses that trope. It's not a bad trope. It's just, well, maybe it's a little bit overused. So anyway, tomorrow we will get into more stuff that's happened in the 39 years of this D&D campaign, which is still running. Today is March 20th. It's Thursday. Currently, the game runs on Thursdays. So if you would like to watch the game, hang out with us, say hello. We actually have a couple of spots at the table open if you'd like to play a character. Get in touch. There'll be information down below the video. We will see you in the next video for Tales of the 39.